Hey guys, welcome back to the Thriving in Love podcast, the podcast that challenges the status quo so couples can thrive as their most authentic selves. I'm your host, Sana, and I am a feminine energy embodiment coach, a spiritual mentor, and the founder of Growth Club in LA. So if you're in LA, come to one of our events. I'll put the information in the show notes. But today we have a very special guest, Teal Elisabeth, the founder of Relax into Love Coaching, a self-love and relationship mastery program for high-achieving women. Teal is an energetic healer, a relationship coach trained in the principles of feminine energy, NLP, and deep subconscious reprogramming, which is so my jam. So you know that we're going to get into some really fun, juicy, powerful stuff today. Teal, welcome. Thank you so much for your time and energy and your wisdom today.
Oh, thanks, Sana. I was telling you just as we jumped on, I feel like we were already sisters, even though I'm just
Literally.
Great.
Oh my gosh, I completely agree because everything that you talk about, especially even just the title, right? Relax into love is everything that I say is like surrender the ego and tap into love. How does love want to flow through you? Like that's what we are here to do is just keep challenging what our egoic desires are to allow love to fully express through us. And then the entire paradox of it all is that you get everything that you want.
Isn't that fun? Life is so fun. Leaving
So
little
fun.
clues every step of the way, but we get so wrapped up in the details we forget.
The how, the when, what do I have to do?
It's so true. It's so true.
So I actually am so curious about your journey because my audience knows my journey. I know my journey. Let's dive into, were you always in this space of knowing and being in touch with your feminine energy, or is this something that you had to learn and cultivate? What's your story?
Not at all. Oh my God. It's just, they always say your mess is your message. And that was for sure my biggest mess for a long time. I would say, yeah, I always talk about for about 8 years of my dating life, I was stuck in this pattern that I now lovingly call the hook and fizzle, where I would
Ooh.
hook them in with this allure of being this independent, fun go-getter. And then a few weeks or months into dating me, it would just fizzle away, or they would just dump me on the spot. And this happened over and over and over again for 8 years.
Wow.
And it really, I mean, now I can look back and go, oh, that's cute. But during the time, it was really frustrating, and it really started to eat away my own self-confidence and self-worth. And very much like you, I could check all the boxes in my life except fulfilling love life. And it really really frustrated me that I couldn't go get the love like I could go get everything else in my life. So it took me going to Thailand and doing a 5-day silent Buddhist meditation retreat where I literally had an out-of-body experience to come back home to me. And that's now a huge thing that I help women through, is kind of taking them on their own, I call it a soul rebirth, to come back home to themselves and to get back in touch with that intuitive feminine self. And from that place, that really got me in touch with my feminine energy and was able to then open up everything else to flow.
Okay, so many questions. One, what inspired you to go to Thailand and do the retreat?
Ironically, even though I was so in my masculine for so long, there was this little whisper of a voice that just kept saying, like, you need to go. It kept telling me to go to Australia. But then my girlfriend was like, hey, I'm going to Thailand. And I was like, well, that's close enough. Australia. Fair enough. Sure, let's go. And while we were in Thailand, my little voice was saying, you should do this. This is different. And I was kind of on this whole self-discovery kick, and I was reading all these Buddhist books, and I was like, that would be kind of cool to do this. And next thing I know, my whole world is being rocked and changed.
Wow. That's insane. So were you already married at this time, or was this something that happened before? Or are you married now? I'm sorry. I'm like totally assuming.
Yeah, I've been married for about 10 years now. No, I was not married. I was very, very single. Very single and very, very sad. A sad version. I was happy on the surface, but deep down, I just knew there was so much more that I had coming for me.
Yeah. Wow. Beautiful. So then walk us through after that. You were like, wow, there's a whole part of me that I clearly have been abandoning myself. And I think that was my thing, was like, I've been abandoning a whole inner world.
Yeah.
For what? For external validation, to be
Mhm.
loved by others, to fit into a society that doesn't even fucking care about me,
Mhm.
like all the
Mhm.
things.
Yeah.
So, what was that like for you?
Yeah, well, this is just such a huge it was a huge download that came through for me where I had this awakening and realization of, oh my gosh, the rise of women's empowerment has been such a fabulous thing for our society as a whole, but it's really damaging our relationships a lot.
Mm.
It's like we've
Hmm.
had this huge pendulum swing from the 1950s housewife now completely almost to this extreme feminist movement, and I really
I don't
see
need
it.
no man.
I don't know, man. Yeah, and I agree. I as wonderful as that is in so many areas
I was that for a long
for
time.
relationships, men are like, "Well, you look like a woman, but you act like a man, so where do I fit
Mm.
in?" And
Mm.
it really makes them feel unsafe, and I know we're gonna talk about that a lot of like, how do
Yeah.
we make a man actually feel safe to be around us as a woman? And so
Yeah.
that's a big part of what I love to talk about and teach women is that we can still be those powerful, incredible, ambitious, amazing, driven women, but we can do it in a way that kind of brings that pendulum back to the medium and still be strong on the inside and soft and warm on the outside. And that's that sweet spot that men just absolutely melt for. And I'm
Mm.
really hoping that the next evolution of women get to step into that role because we need that for the
Agreed.
planet.
Yeah.
We don't need more men. Men are wonderful and the men need to still be men.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we as women have something even more beautiful, that divine feminine that gets to flow through. So that's really kind of what I was able to pull in from my experience meditating with the monks and then coming back into the corporate world and just realizing I don't want to do it the man way. I want to do it the
Yeah.
feminine way from a place of strength.
So you were doing this like many years ago.
Mhm.
So like what was that like in the corporate space? Like were you able to figure out that balance in corporate?
It was definitely avant-garde at the time and just
Mhm.
pushing the edge. I was working at Uber in San Francisco, at
Oh
the
my god.
headquarters. Yeah, during all the scandals and all the stress and
Ooh,
all the things. And I was on the people development team building all the training programs
wow.
for all the
Mhm.
employees. And so it definitely challenged me to, I mean, Uber's all about pushing the envelope anyways.
Right.
So it kind of allowed me to be in that space. And I purposely said, I'm not going to fall into the way everyone else is doing this. I'm going to challenge people and push back on people and do it my way. And it was very well received. I was running meditation circles in all of the different offices around the world
Wow.
and, having conflict resolution conversations, for the employees. And it was really beautiful to bring some of those more feminine principles into a very corporate masculine workplace. And it was
Wow.
really well received. And then getting
That's
to start to
incredible.
bring that into my own relationships is really what
Mm.
shifted things. As I started to actually pull myself out of my own head on
Yeah.
these dates and realize, wait, it's not about the proving, it's not about the doing, it's not about who I'm
Mm.
being. It is about who I'm being. It's all about who I'm being.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
made a huge shift in what allowed me to attract men in my beautiful man. Yeah.
Wow. So what was that journey like going from starting to date again with this new mindset, with this new like it's not like validation that Uber gave you, but I guess it's kind of like recognition of like what you're doing and what you're believing is needed, is important, is like people are ready for it. Right? Like I think that was important. And then how did that come into your dating life?
I think the biggest thing for me was just really starting to cut the bullshit of the ego, as I love that you are
Mm.
just so all about. Starting to really become very aware of what is my brain telling me versus what is my intuition telling me, and starting to
Mm.
give more power to the intuition over the brain. And I could just start to see them as very different entities within myself. And this is such a powerful tool for any woman listening, just starting to notice, how does your body feel when your brain is talking to you versus when your spirit and your soul is talking to you? Can you actually decipher those two?
Yeah.
And I
What
noticed, Mhm.
what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I noticed
Deciphering the two.
because I
Yeah.
think relationships are the perfect incubator to test these
Mhm.
things out, right? Because we tend to get really frazzled for some reason when we're in the presence of a gorgeous man.
So
I
true.
could be my playful, fun self around all my friends, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Why don't you attract anyone in? You seem so great." But
Mm.
as soon as you put me in front of a man, I talk about it as like the crazy girl comes out. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Ah! Turn into this other version of me. And that version of me was what was subconsciously and energetically pushing men away. I was
Mm.
anxious. My heart felt constricted. I felt tight. I felt overthinking everything. I mean, you know the type. We all know the type. We've all
Yeah.
probably been that type at some
We've been
point.
it. Mm-hmm.
And so just starting to notice, when is the crazy girl trying to show up? And when is my authentic self really able to be relaxed in the presence of men? And starting to actually cultivate more practices to allow me to be relaxed in the presence of men. And that, I noticed a huge shift in how men were responding to me. And that was kind of the beginning of it. Mhm.
Wow, beautiful. And then when did you meet your now husband?
We worked together actually after I got back from my travels. And so we were coworkers for about 2 years, and we always had a little thing for each other, but neither of us acted on it. So we ended up just building a really beautiful friendship and growing in the
That's
company
beautiful.
together. And then he ended up leaving, probably so he could actually date me.
Oh, that's so
He wouldn't
cute.
admit it at the time, but that's probably what happened.
It was his soul nudging him to quit for a reason.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we also quit our jobs and traveled the world for 2.5
Oh,
years and
wow.
started our companies side by side. And that's when Relax into Love was born. And
Wow.
now I've been coaching women for over 7 years, have clients all over the world. And it's so rewarding to be able to
Yeah,
teach all these things that I had to learn the hard way, the long way, the difficult way, and be able to kind of distill it into very tangible little nuggets to help women on their path, as I'm sure
that's
you do
so
too.
beautiful. Yes. But I love that you're so clear on your message. And you like when I look at your brand, is something I really admire so much. You're so crystal clear on who you are, what you have to offer. And it's
Mm.
so easy to be like just receive that fresh breath of air of like, oh, yeah, this makes sense. Yes. Like even if someone's completely new to this world, it's like the second you're on your website, the second we're on your podcast, on your Instagram, it's like you're speaking to the soul
Mm.
instead of like trying to convince people of something that you have achieved and now you're selling, if
Mm.
that makes sense.
Oh my God, thank you for that reflection. I
Mhm.
haven't had that reflected to me. People don't tell me how it comes through very often.
Yeah.
So to hear
It's
that,
my favorite thing to do.
it's a
It's
huge
like give
gift.
people the first impression, right?
It's
It's
a
like,
huge gift to
yeah.
receive that. And
Mm,
that is my intention. And
yeah.
I'm glad that that's coming
It
through.
comes through. Yeah.
Hmm. And I guess,
Loudly,
oh,
clearly,
I'm so
boldly.
glad because I very much do walk my talk, and I don't want it to
Yeah.
come from a place of the ego or approving or a look at me or a validation or any of that.
Yeah.
And it's the same way in dating, right?
Mm,
Men specifically, but all people, they pick up on when you're
yeah.
being inauthentic and when you're being true to yourself.
100%. And I think
When they,
like
Mhm.
the veil is being lifted now more than ever before. People are getting smarter. They are able to see through the bullshit. They're getting connecting with the bodies. Like this is exactly what the patriarchy didn't want for us because then they can't control us. We can't be easily manipulated. We can't sit here in fear mongering tactics and be like, "Oh, I'm broken. I need this. I need that." I like happy, healthy people rarely need to buy a lot of things, and that's not good for capitalism, and that's
Mm,
not good for the economy, and that's not good for the rich pockets to stay rich and for the poor pockets to stay poor. And I think it's been a long time coming. Thank freaking God for it. Like quite literally, thank you God for it. But yeah, I think that it's time for a shift in all aspects of life. I think it's been happening in ourselves. I see so many beautiful people waking up, especially with what's happening in Palestine. It's become so abundantly clear that like there's a power dynamic, there's a power struggle, there's power struggles in our society, there's power struggles in our homes, there's power struggles in ourselves.
mhm,
So I love that you talk a lot about what you said earlier is like the first thing is how can we get women to connect with that feminine energy, to reconnect with their essence, to come home to who they are. So can you talk a little bit about one, what that looks like, two, why it's important, and then three, like how people can feel once that happens?
Yeah, yeah. There's a beautiful exercise that I love to take women through when they join into my program. And I talk about it as almost like the layers of mud that we carry within ourselves. When you think about it, we come onto this earth as these little beings of light and love energy, just this little ball of light. And over time, we have experiences, some positive, some negative. And those negative and sometimes traumatic experiences, if they're not looked at and healed, they start to almost layer that light, almost like a layer of mud. and they start to layer on top of each other and get heavier and heavier and darker until at some point we just become so disconnected from that light and love. And so many women come to me and say, I just feel like that light within me has died, or I can't connect to myself, or I'm just so caught up in the brain. I don't even know who I am, you know? And what's really happening is that we have so many layers that have built up between the mind and the soul. And so really the biggest act of self-love that we can do, and the process of the soul rebirthing that I take women through, is to begin to rinse away those layers of mud and come back home to that spirit. And that's when the brain doesn't have to feel like it's on overdrive all the time or trying to do everything or take over all the time, because we have that guidance system that we're tapped back into. And then we can actually put the brain back into its place as a tool on the shelf and not running us as our identity. So I think that that's one of the biggest things with the self-love journey, first and foremost. And that is so important because that's what allows us to relax into ourself, which allows other people to relax into our presence and eventually relax into love with us. We've all been around that woman or that girl, that insecure girl that is very disconnected from herself. And you can just tell that just something's off,
The
right?
pick me girl.
Yeah. And I love her with all my
Yeah.
heart because I know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's not anything that is wrong with her. It's an
100%.
awareness that is not quite there yet. And so we don't want to be that girl when we're going out dating and
Yeah.
when we're trying to connect with men. We want to go out as the evolved, grown, powerful, mature, kick-ass,
Yeah.
authentic version of us that we are, so that men can go, hot damn, where have you been all my life? Snatch you up tomorrow. You're not going anywhere. And
Hell yeah.
that energy is so magnetic to men and to everyone in our life. To
But
career
then
opportunities.
society likes to sell this narrative that strong, powerful women are too much, and a man just wants a simple girl to have fun with, to enjoy life with, which I know, and I know you know so much there. So can you talk us through, like, how can we get women to shift that perspective, come back to the truth, which is what you're saying and what you're speaking on, and how can we remind them that yes, the play is actually super, super, super important, but not at the sacrifice of self?
Yeah, yeah. I think what society's alluding to is more of the way women have become up until now with this feminist energy kind of mentality of, I'm going to act like a man. I'm going to be in my masculine energy. I'm going to prove, like energetic spikes. I don't need you. I'm fine. I got this. I'm better than you sometimes.
Yes.
And that energy is very emasculating and it's very threatening. And it's not actually allowing us to be our most authentic self. We think we're being powerful, but we're not actually being empowered. We're just commanding out power because we think we need to be in power, but that's not actually what men respect. Men are not afraid of a strong woman. You and I are both strong women.
Yeah.
They're afraid and disempowered by women who are trying to command it and attack them with it, right? But when we are embodied in it, as you and I teach, the embodied power, that embodied feminine energy, is that inner strength, the inner strength of, I know my value, I know my worth, I know my boundaries, I don't need anyone to do anything for me, but I can still grace people with the poise and the love and the honor and the love that I have. But if you fuck with me,
Yeah, exactly. That
But I don't,
self-respect, right, is
but I
so
don't need
important.
to project that out. I hold it within me.
Beautiful. So let's shift dialogue right now about where and how can women learn about how to be these like self-fulfilled, self-actualized beings. Where do we balance that with when do we need our men? When do we actually go to them for support, that emotional support, the, wanting to feel like we're taken care of in our mess or in our emotions? Sometimes we are like, well, if I have to be this whole independent person anyway, and this whole person that is just responsible for myself and my own emotions, where do the men fit in?
Beautiful question. Yeah. And I think this is the hard part that many of my clients struggle with is that we want to be connected to men, but we don't know how to connect to them because we're afraid of all of these feelings that are here. And we don't want to dump them onto them because that doesn't really work. And we don't want to shove them down because that doesn't work. And so I think the best balance here is that we still manage and self-contain ourselves. We're not looking to them to fix us. We're not looking to them to dump everything onto. We're handling that for ourselves, but we're still being open and vulnerable to let them into the experience. Men love being able to be part of the experience without having to be the one to save you. So case in point, if I'm having a really hard day, I'm not going to just come over to my husband and just dump it all on him and blame him and, be annoyed around him. I'm going to do what I need to do to process it. But I'm going to come to him at the end of the day and be like, babe, I'm sorry I was a little bit snippy today. I was feeling all of this. This was going on. I'm really feeling worried about this. I'm not sure what to do about this. And allowing him to be part of the experience without all of the energy attached to it. And that's the sweet spot because emotions are a beautiful thing. They are the gateway into deep intimacy. And we need men to feel the connection. We need them to feel that emotional bond with us. But if we are still connecting and communicating while we're in the energy of the emotion, I talk about it as like a comet with flames. They're just feeling all the flames of the comet. They're not actually feeling the nugget of what that emotion is representing. Beautiful. So if we can handle the flames, then we can bring them the comet and say, here, how do we want to handle this? How can we build on this together?
And what are some practical ways to handle our own flames?
I have a whole 4-step framework for it.
Perfect. Love it.
Yeah. But it's really comes down to just making sure that we're not putting this person in front of the emotion. We're taking space first off to process it for ourselves before coming back to them. Because I think that's what happens is we have a feeling coming up and we don't know what's going to go on and we don't want to be that emotional person. So then we just shove it down. And we're like, we're fine, even though we're not fine. And they're like, you're not fine. I'm fine. And that's when it just becomes a disconnect. So
or worse, right? Like we're shoving down so much that one day they do one tiny little thing and
Yes. So the first step in the framework, I'm not going to go into all the steps, but the first step is just to take space, to give yourself that and say, hey, babe, I'm feeling a feeling right now. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Oh my God, that saved my marriage so many times. So how do you and your partner practice this in real time with kids? Because I don't have kids and I can't even imagine what that's like. So if you could just shed some light on like, sometimes you can't take the space. Sometimes it's like the kid is the one or something is happening in the moment. How do you do it then?
Yeah. Whether you have kids already, for anyone listening, or you're thinking about having kids, I mean, ideally, you're building this muscle before you get into having kids because kids is just going to exacerbate any little thing that's there.
Louder for the people in the back. You're allowed to take time before having kids.
Yes. Please do.
Please.
It'll be better for everyone and they won't have to go into coaching and therapy in the future.
And tell your parents that I just got married. I don't need to get married. I don't need to have kids right away. Like, ugh.
Yeah.
Yes.
But no, I think, building that foundation of emotional safety is just probably the biggest thread for us that allows everything else to be built upon. And what I mean by that is that there's no secrets, there's no hiding, there's nothing that is left unsaid. So anything that I'm feeling, I'm noticing that I don't like, I'm going to notice it within myself. I'm going to sit with it. I'm going to process it. And then I'm going to share it with him in a neutral, loving way so that we can have a conversation about it, so that we're always trying to stay on the same page and same thing with him. So there's never a time where we're walking on eggshells or wondering, oh God, what is he thinking? Or when is he going to blow up on me? And that builds that level of emotional safety where we can both feel very comfortable that we're good.
Yeah.
And it is such a good feeling when you know you and your partner are good. And then if something does happen, because things are going to happen, after the event, you handle it as best you can. It's not always going to go perfectly. I am not perfect at this. But after the event, you take time. And I think he and I are both really good about this, of having that emotional awareness of, okay, where did I not step perfectly? Where did you not step perfectly? How can we do this better in the future? And just having very mature, responsible conversations about it to grow and learn. Because every experience is such a learning opportunity to either grow closer together or grow apart.
So true. Yeah. Have you guys always been like that? Or was it something that you had to learn and cultivate? in your relationship?
It's definitely something we had to learn and cultivate. Yeah. My husband naturally is more of an introvert and I'm more of an extrovert. So he tends to
Yeah.
just kind of withdraw and be on his own. And I like to talk everything through.
Yeah.
So I have had to learn to kind of give him more space to just do what he needs to do. And I've had to learn to process in other ways and not just be like, let's talk about this. Let's talk about
Yes.
this. Because that's what we
Literally.
tend to do, ladies, right? Just
Yeah.
let me just talk
Yeah.
about this with you right now. But that's not always the best
And
time to be
like they
talking about it.
feel that sense of abandonment. I know I did in the beginning where I was like, I just even though he would go take a space, instead of me using that same space to process, I would be sulking in the fact, oh, I'm feeling abandoned in that
Mhm.
moment instead of using that time constructively to process my own emotions.
Yes. 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 It's a learning journey for all of
Yeah.
us. It really
Yeah.
is. But when you both can take that space and have that moment to go, okay, this didn't go perfectly. How can we work on this? How, and taking responsibility, right? I think having a
Hmm.
partner that is able to meet you in the self-awareness is key. This is
Yes.
actually something my best friend is now realizing with her marriage, that it did not go well and it's moving into divorce because of the
Mm.
fact that she married so young and she didn't have the value of, does this person actually have self-awareness as one of their key values in life? A value, or I don't know, trait or
Yeah.
skill, or
Hmm.
if you're married to a partner or with a partner that lacks that self-awareness, it's really difficult to be able to go into the depths of
Yeah.
things because it turns into blame really easily.
Hmm.
So I think that that's probably the first part, is just making sure that both of you are cultivating your own sense of taking responsibility and understanding what your part was in any conflict so that you can actually meet as a teammate and not as a, what's the opposite of an
A
ally.
struggle, a power struggle, right? Like enemies. Yeah.
And yeah.
So, what are some like green flags or red flags to look out for in order to be able to tell if somebody is capable of self awareness?
Oh, that's a really great question. I think, conflict is so many people are afraid of conflict and worried and averse to conflict. But conflict to me is one of the biggest gut checks for a relationship. Are you going to be able to sustain a relationship or not? So I think red flag and green flags is, how do they handle conflict? Are
Mm,
you guys able to come back to the conflict and take responsibility? Are they able to acknowledge your side and acknowledge their side? Or are they just sticking hard on what they know to be right and true? Do they have the ability to connect into even their feelings and articulate how they feel? And a lot of men do struggle with this. And this is something that is a beautiful balance, with men needing to have a little bit of this on their own, but it's also something that as a female and as a woman, we can cultivate with men. And the
mm,
more that we lean into those feelings within ourselves and kind of lead in that area, we can actually sometimes pull it out of men. And this is such a beautiful skill that I love helping women cultivate, is actually like creating the emotional safety for a man to open up his heart and
mm,
deepen into that place of vulnerability for himself. Because men are not just the type that are just going to be on the first date dumping all their feelings onto you. And so it
yeah.
is hard to gut check. Like, does he
Mhm,
have it? Does he not? But when we are able to voluntarily kind of lean into that emotional space and lead the emotional space, the men get to lead more of the physical space and the dates and the planning, and we get to lead from more of the emotional space.
mm.
When we lead from that space and they're able to follow our lead, it's a really good green light.
That is so beautiful. And I love that you said voluntarily step into that emotional space to lead, because I know with my clients, something I'm actually struggling with helping them through right now is they are in that mindset of, oh, like if I do this and help him and nurture him, am I going to turn into his mother? I don't want to feel like he's my kid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do we like make sure that there's a balance
Mm-hmm.
between holding that emotional safety container for them, and then where do we draw the boundaries
Mm.
when it starts to get too boo-hoo crybaby, he's like totally trauma dumping on you and now you're in this mess.
Yeah. I think it's all about the mindset that we go into it with. And so
Mhm.
if you are knowing, I am not his mother, I'm going in as his cheerleader, as his partner, as his teammate, and having respect for him is the other part. Like the intention of
Mm.
the identity that you're going in with, and and having respect. I am going in because I respect him as a man. I see him in his highest potential. I'm trying to call him into his highest potential. Whereas when we look at it as more of a baby or a kid, we're looking down on him and we're losing
Oof.
respect for him.
Beautiful.
So for me, there was many moments in my journey with Spencer where they were like, yeah, he would open up on things and it was like, okay, this is definitely a vulnerable piece that's maybe I'm not seeing you in your best light, but I know your potential. And that's what our role is as a girlfriend and as a wife is I'm constantly reminding you of who you get to be. So even when you are feeling in your weakest moments, I'm going to remind you of the powerful man that you are. And that's what they need from us. They
Yeah.
don't need us to be, oh, you poor baby, you're going to be fine. They need a teammate that says, baby, I know you're hurting right now, but you've got this. And I believe in you and you're going to get through this. And that is still being emotionally nurturing, but in a very different way.
So different. Such a different way. Like that sounds good. It feels sexy. It
Yeah.
just like ignites this new flame of like reminding them of their power versus being the one healing them or coaching them or being their therapist or trying to fix their problems. And it's the same thing, right? I know for so many of us, I know me included, is like so many times I don't want my man to fix my problems, but that's his like natural place that he goes, and I'm like, no, babe, just like just
Remind
let
me
me
of
know
how
I
great
got
I am.
this.
Tell me
Just
how
tell me
great
I
I
got. Yeah, exactly.
am.
So I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, I'm gonna take
Mhm.
that with me in my marriage. So thank
Yeah.
you for that.
Yeah. And on the back end, when they do step into that energy and they're
Hmm.
feeling badass again, guess who's gonna remember those conversations and be like, my woman is the best woman ever. And I'm gonna cherish her for the rest of my life because she believed in
So
me when
true.
I didn't believe in myself.
And that's truly how you become that power couple, right? Where you guys are lifting each other up. You're striving up together independently and together, which is like, I think the secret sauce to desire, to intimacy, to keeping your love alive and electric between you two.
Yes. Yes. I talk about it as like a DNA double helix spiral,
Oh,
where sometimes you are really aligned and you're right on it with each other, and other times you kind of pull apart and you're kind of doing separate tracks, but
mm.
then you meet back up in a higher point of alignment
Oof.
because you're both evolving in your soul. And it's that to me is spiritual and evolved partnership. That is the
Yes.
next tier of what we get to step into as evolved beings on this
Mm.
planet in relationship. And
And
that's what
that's,
I'm living in my marriage. And it is
yeah, same.
fucking fantastic. With two
Same, girl,
kids, you
same.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how you're doing it with kids. That's insane. I have two
Yeah.
cats and they drive me crazy. But yeah, no. And that's, hello, the name of my podcast, Thriving in Love, right?
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah.
how can we make sure that, I know for so many women is like when your whole life you've been told, get married, have kids, right? And then once you do those things, and then it's like, wait, I still have a whole life to live. What does that look like? And like especially if they're not as motivated by the money and fame and success and the accolades and things like that, how can they stay electric and vibrant and alive? How can their Shakti, their life force, stay alive within them? And I think it's through this. It's like, okay, now it's time to go on the spiritual evolution of love. I know for me, I'm such a hopeless romantic. Like I care about love way more than I care about money. And like that's what helps me. And for so long that like did die off for a bit because I was like trying to do it in the way that everybody else is, where it was like, yeah, I started the businesses, I made a lot of money, I got a New York Times article, all of the things, and I was still like, this isn't it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
It
love
always
that.
comes back down to that alignment in our heart and soul in all
Hmm.
aspects of life.
I love that. Thank you. So just to shift gears again, let's talk a little bit about gender roles. When do we honor them and when do we challenge them?
What a fun conversation to have in this modern day because we get to make up the rules, don't we?
Yeah.
There
Hell
is
yeah.
no right or wrong to any of it. I think this is pretty personal to each person of, how what they feel. There's no one way I don't think that we need to be in relationship. And being feminine doesn't mean we have to be some ditzy doormat damsel. It's really, for me, I find that fall into a natural flow of being more in my masculine role in my career and more in my feminine in the home. And that
Same.
just works really well for me. I have to be very careful, though, that the masculine doesn't bleed into the relationship, though. It's still an intentional decision and that I have to make sometimes. And I can catch myself when it happens because I can feel the difference in how I'm interacting with my man when I'm still in my masculine energy. I'm more demanding. I'm a little bit more controlling. I'm, yeah, a little bit more snippy and kind of urgent on things. Whereas when
Yes.
I'm more relaxed, I'm just kind of like, everything's fine, just letting things flow. I'm very present. I'm very at peace and relaxed. So I think there's room for both. And I love that we in this day and age get to be both and have
Yeah.
both, and that men get to be both too.
And I love that. And it's also seasons, right? It's like,
Mm.
I know for me, I do have seasons where I'm like, I want to be more nurturing. I want to cook and clean. I want to take care of the house. And then there's other seasons where, like, maybe I'm traveling a lot for work, or maybe I'm writing a book, I'm birthing a creative project, and I need to be more in my solitude and in my cocoon. And I'm like, babe, can you like just take care of the food and all of the things and this and that? And like, he rises to the occasion, you
Mhm.
know? And it's like
Mhm.
working with each other's seasons,
Mhm.
doing checkpoints on the regular and being like, hey, what's your capacity? What's my capacity? What are we doing? Where are we, maybe instead of a date night, because we don't have time, maybe we use that money towards hiring someone to come and just clean the house or cook or what have you. And like just becoming a team
Yeah.
and not feeling like, oh, I could never have time to myself. I have all these things that I have to do.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
think
like, well,
that's
you
slowly
can.
unwiring in people over time. I think that's a new movement that seems to be happening. What do they call it? The soft life now?
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
movement
Soft life
that's
era,
kind
the
of
lazy girl era, the lazy CEO era, all the things.
it's
Yes.
definitely becoming a new trend right now, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
But there's
So
still a
true.
lot of truth to it. Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I love that you said it's becoming a trend right now because you are the pioneer of all of this. So again, I
Relax into it all.
thank you. Thank you so much. How can my audience find you and work with you?
Yeah. So, any women that are feeling activated by this conversation, I would love to invite you to a 30-minute love breakthrough call with me. Just if you want to explore, going deeper on any of these concepts and seeing how I could support you. So, I'll leave the link with Sana in the show notes. And I also have a beautiful two guided meditations. I feel like as the Relax into Love brand, I have to have a meditation, right?
I
So I have
love it.
one call all about calling in your dream partnership and one about cultivating deep self-love and connection. So you're welcome to download those if those feel inspiring. And then I've got my Instagram and my Facebooks and all the things as well. I'll leave it all in the show notes.
Perfect. Again, thank you so much. Any last words of wisdom for people that may be out there and really wanting to relax into love? Last bits of wisdom.
I think my biggest invitation for each woman is that, one, I applaud you for just taking the time to listen to this podcast and find knowledge. This is not something that I just magically figured out. It's because I actively sought it out. And it's not something that's taught in school. It's not something that we are modeled necessarily with our families. So I applaud you for just taking the time to try and figure this out for yourself. And I really do believe that when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Mm.
And when we just listen to that little intuitive voice, it's always guiding us, just really giving it credit when it's saying, go this way, do this, try this, whatever that is, it's giving you those little breadcrumbs to bring you back home. And so listen to those.
So beautiful. Teal, thank you. Thank you for your
Yeah.
magic and your light today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.